Right, I'll call the meeting to order on Thursday, January the 26th. Welcome, everybody. The first item on our agenda is often introductions, or always introductions, I guess I should say. And I'm going to ask that we go around and introduce ourselves in the area that we're representing. We do have a couple of changes today. I think TJPDC has a new staff member that we're going to highlight, right? And I want to welcome Ann Malik as one of the new Albemarle County representatives. We're going to miss Biddy. And I know, Ann is, in January we assign boards and commissions. And so Ann and B traded a couple of items. So we are welcoming Ann.
So Ann won out.
Ann won, that's exactly right. All right, so with that, Sarah, why don't you start on your side?
Sure. Sarah Pennington with the TJPDC, and I represent and oversee the ride share program.
Ted Rick with JAUNT.
Hal Morgan, I'm from Albemarle County, and I sit on the JAUNT board as vice president, and I represent I'm the rural representative from JAUNT to this group.
Great.
Lucas Ames, JAUNT urban representative.
All right.
Juan Lee, Charles Ferry Transit.
Brian Pinkston, Charlottesville City Council.
And Malcolm. Diane McKeel, Albemarle County.
Lloyd Stokes, City of Charlottesville.
Kendall Howell from University Transit.
And welcome.
Thank
You
you.
don't look like Becca at all. All right.
All right.
And I'm Allison Day, I'm also with UPS.
Great. We have 2 for 1 today. Is that
2 for
right?
1, yeah.
That's good. All right.
Sandy Shackelford, Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission.
Lucinda Shannon, Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission.
And then we'll go around in the back, like we always do.
Ruth Emmerich, Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission.
Welcome, and tell me, I didn't quite catch your name. Tell me.
Ruth Emmerich.
Ruth Emmerich. Welcome. Nice to have you. There you go.
Curtis Carpinato. I just started Monday as a planner with TJPDC.
Great. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Oops.
No, you're good.
Did you want to ask more questions? Because
No, that's okay. I'm good. Go ahead.
I'm Gretchen Thomas, I'm the administrative assistant for TJPDC.
Charmaine White with Albemarle County Transportation.
Jessica Hirsch Valerie, Albemarle County Community Development.
Ben Chambers, Transportation Planning Manager at the City of Charlottesville.
Wyatt Birchall, Piedmont Environmental Council.
Great, and I see somebody else back there.
Yeah, right. TJPDC.
Great, all right. We thank you, everybody, for joining us. And let me just make a note that Trevor Henry from Albemarle and Garland from CAP are not able to attend today. Garland Williams from CAP, so they'll be absent. Peter Thompson's emailed us and said he would be joining us a little bit late. And do we have anybody, who do we have on Zoom?
Well, we have Wood Hudson from DRPT.
Great.
And Christine is joining us.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to see, so Wood's there.
Yeah.
And
Sandy
Sandy,
is the logo.
Sandy, you're
There
in. There she is. Okay, Christine, good.
Mayor Logan.
So you know you guys have to really wave your hand and jump up and down and do something to catch my attention. It's so easy to miss when you're on the screen. That's great. All right. Now, on to the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so that's Ann Malik and Brian made the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, we have an agenda. The next item is the draft meeting minutes. And these are from December the 8th because, as you all know, the November and December meeting we sort of pushed into the December 8th meeting. So are there any notes or any comments about the minutes? No, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move for approval of the minutes of the date,
December the 8th.
December the 8th,
2022. So that's from Brian. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Hal. All seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain since I wasn't here.
That's it. So Ann is abstaining. All right. And I guess the next thing we was intended to go on and handle while we're doing this are our meeting dates for 2023, and they were in our packet. You want to mention it briefly, or I'm happy to ask folks if they had a chance to look at these dates. I did notice that we canceled the July meeting, and that is because normally the city and the county over the last couple of years have taken some deep breaths and stepped back a little bit in July. That works for everybody. And of course, if there's something emergent that we need, we can always call a meeting. And then because December the 14th wasn't as close to Christmas, I think was the thought here, rather than combining the November and December meetings and changing the date, we just canceled the November 23rd meeting. That works for everybody. I think that was the thinking. Yeah. So unless someone has a concern about a particular date, I think we probably should approve these. So I could entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the meeting dates as you just outlined and as in the packet.
Great. All right, so Brian and Ann, thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we can update our calendars, which I see Ann is doing right now. All right. Matters from the public. Ladies, do we have anybody from the public who's here to speak?
We do have some people from the public on Zoom. If you would like to speak, raise your hand now.
And let me just remind folks that you have 3 minutes, and Lucinda is going to time you for the 3 minutes, so that we.
Matt Wallace from Scott.
Oh, great. All right, Matt. All right. I'm trying to find Matt on the screen.
Oh,
I see his name.
he's not allowed to be in.
Okay, so he's just going to speak. All right. Well, Matt, with that, we know you, so go right ahead, dear.
Greetings, everyone. Matt Lawless, Scottsville Town Administrator, joining from the office because of a scheduling conflict. I really appreciate the work of the board and try to join these routinely. This particular agenda looks really good, and I look forward to seeing everything, particularly commending the JAUNT final report is very informative and describes the goals of the agency really well. I just want to represent the Scottsville neighbors who rely on this service, elders going to appointments, and a few younger commuters who are really happy to use JAUNT regularly in their commuter service. I've occasionally done that myself and appreciated it. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it. Great to hear from you, if not see you. And who's next?
That's everybody.
That's it. Okay. All right. Well, with that, we will move on to the JAUNT report. You are next, Ted, on the agenda. So the JAUNT 2022 review, and then looking ahead to 2023. And it starts with your presentation, I believe. So and we did have this in our board packet. So.
All right, thank you very much for
Thank you. This is where they have to.
And
just
can
use a British accent.
Can those folks that are on Zoom see okay? Can everybody see the presentation? Speak now or hold your peace. Okay. I don't see any hands going up over there, so.
So thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about what we've been up to. Just to kind of give everybody a refresher, I know you're all pretty much in tune with transit. But just real quickly, JAUNT is actually what we know as a public service corporation. We're owned by 5 municipalities, Albemarle County, the City of Charlottesville, Louisa, Nelson, and Urbana. They're all stockholders. We have 2 other counties part of our system, but they're not stockholders, Greene County and Buckingham, though they have ex officio status on our board. Even though we're kind of a quasi public entity, we have elements of a private company as well. Our organizational structure is the same as GRTC in Richmond, but we do try to follow the public requirements. Again, we try to support people by giving them opportunities for independent life, which not only gets them to work, but also to medical appointments, to create more healthier outcomes. We think we're a good investment in the community. Other studies have shown that every dollar spent on transit turns over 7 times in the community. So if you spend $1, you'll get $7. That's because people who use transit either make money or spend money. And in that economic activity, they generate a kind of a domino effect in investments. And also we can promote equity as well by taking down the barriers to jobs and education and medicine, and we're proud of that role. John has been set with challenges in the last couple of years, no news. A couple of years ago, the agency was embroiled in some controversy. We had some staff members that made some bad decisions. As part of that process, other issues were discovered, which I'll go over in a moment. So those have been kind of consuming us for a little bit of a time. We're also looking ahead to the future, not only alternative fuel vehicles, microtransit as a service delivery mechanism we might want to get into. We're also planning for the future, as Matt was mentioning, and again, we're trying to recover from the pandemic ridership decrease that we've experienced. Addressing some of the issues that were discovered as part of this controversy a couple of years ago, there are 3 basic areas. One is how we handle information and how we contract for services throughout the community, how we use some of our funding sources. There are a myriad of other issues which are relatively minor to address. On performance data, there's not much to say about it except that the accuracy of the information was much to be desired. We think we had people trying to game the system, get more money out of governmental agencies, and the process by which we obtained money was not very transparent. We've changed that, and we're working hard to be a lot more transparent about our data. We're tying our data straight to operations. So if we tell you we run so many hours of service, we'll be able to show it to you how it came about. Whereas in the past, that was not always the case. We've also not billed some of our social agencies correctly, or we're trying to address that. One of the issues we're trying to deal with is how do we allocate costs, and that's really a complicated issue, much more than you think it would be, and I'll try to explain that a little bit more in a moment. We also want to have better contracts with our funding partners, and then just kind of work with the agencies to better tie compensation to services, which have not been as strongly felt as they need to be. Another area that's of concern to us is John operates is really a separately complicated business. We operate in rural urban areas. We have funding that attaches to each jurisdiction, each geography. You can't mix them sometimes, and each funding entity wants to know how its share of the pie was being spent. So it kind of creates a puzzle for us to put it all together and make it all work. One of the things that we discovered is that you can't mix rural funds with federal and urban funds. And I'm speaking of the urban side, I mean, of the federal side. In the past, on the left chart, there are only 2 worlds for John, rural and urban. And the urban was represented by the ADA zone around cap routes. So we would use rural money to support services in the rural areas, in the urban areas. That wasn't really quite right. On the right shows that in the blue area is rural, the green is still the ADA zone, but there's some white areas which are also urbanized, for which we have no urban federal money to cover. Even though in the past we've been doing that, that was not acceptable. And that creates some problems for us. First of all, we have a fair amount of service coming in and out of both the rural, urban areas as well as the ADA zones. So if we were to not serve the, what we call the deserts, people would be left behind. Unfortunately, and it really impacts the county more than anybody else, that has to be paid for by somehow. If you don't have the federal money to pay for it, that means the local taxpayer needs to pick it up, or we reduce the service. And we're starting to see some issues related to that even now. A very poignant part of all this is how we get capital. In the past, we would be able to, for every dollar we spent on capital, 80 cents can come from the federal government, 16 from the state, and 4 cents from the locals. Because we operate in a mixed environment, and because we don't receive federal urban capital money, we can only use part of our money from the federal on capital. So instead of getting 80% reimbursement, we want to get a 48% reimbursement. That means the locals go from 4% to 36%. Our average annual capital expenditure is around $2.6 million. Using the local ratio, in the past, we would only need to get $104,000 out of all of our funding partners. Now it's almost $1 million. And that's falling more heavily on the urban's part, the city, and Albemarle County than anybody else. And that's creating some issues. It's a problem. We have solutions and we're trying to work through them, but it's a nut to crack with some of our partners. It causes even more issues because we have an aging fleet. We have 108 vehicles. We think we've got 28 too many, so we got to get rid of some of them. And we're going to be working on getting rid of them in a systematic fashion. Our vehicles tend to last only 5 years, 150,000 miles, and it's easy to put miles on, especially in the rural areas. The price of vehicles used to be around $96,000 and it takes 6 months to get them. Now it's around $160,000 and almost 2 years to get them. This chart here, the yellow bar, shows how far a bus in our fleet travels before it breaks down on average. You want to see that go far as high as possible. So as our buses were relatively new, we did great. 20 and 21 is on the right side of the chart. We're seeing about 20, 25,000 miles between breakdowns. Not too bad, but it's not a favorable trend. The blue line is the average age of our fleet, even taking out the 20 excess vehicles that we have. The average age of our buses today are 4.2 years old. And I already told you that life expectancy is usually about 5 years. So we have a very old fleet, and we have a constraint on the capital side because we don't have sufficient urban federal capital money. All right, so all of this is creating, between recognizing the deserts and recognizing the capital program and being more transparent with our cost structure, it is putting pressure on all of our local communities. They're seeing an increase in how much we're asking from them, anywhere from 20% increase, in some cases up to a 200% increase. Now, we have ways to deal with that, and part of it is the funding shift, but also we have to give our bus operators 20% raises back in April. And because Charlene was taking all of our drivers. So anyway, we're playing whack-a-mole with on the wages issue. Also, we weren't transparent about how costs and funding were being distributed. And when you play the game the correct way, it hurts some people and helps others. And then, of course, the capital funds is an issue I've already talked about. This is a chart from Louisa, and it's kind of typical of some of the challenges we're facing in redistributing our costs and our funding allocations across jurisdictions. I'm going to tell you, multi-jurisdictional cost allocation and funding is an issue the RTA will have to take care of. So we're already kind of piloting some of that issue, and it will be an issue that we'll have to grapple with in the future. These charts, these bars show different funding sources. There's a JAUNT federal operating on the far right, and the bars show what % our expenses are being covered by that funding source. So in the case of the average JAUNT community in FY '24, we're covering about 35% on federal operating assistance of our expenses. In Louisa, prior to '24, they were getting more than 50% of their cost covered. And that's typical of other communities as well. Part of it is because we had COVID money. And COVID money gave us a lot of resources to throw at people. But the normal reimbursement should be 50%. And you can see in most cases, like in Louisa, they're getting more than 50%. And in fact, they have done better than the average community in JAUNT. Now that we're trying to get everybody on equal playing field, they're seeing an increase in the local share, and they're not happy about it. And other communities are seeing similar results. And the board, we're working on how to deal with that. We may see some service cuts in some areas because some communities may refuse to take an increase. On a more positive note, we are looking for the future. If you want to stop me and ask questions, you can. I'm looking for the future. Obviously, we're concerned about the environment. And one of our goals is to reduce greenhouse emissions at JAUNT by about 45% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. These are goals that are, I think, are local or state derived. So we engaged a consultant, the same consultant that CAT is using, to see what other ways that we can propel our vehicles. And so there are some basic ideas. You can do CNG, you can do hydrogen, which will create fuel cells, which generate electricity, or just do battery charged vehicles. So we looked at that. We had an advisory committee composed of different stakeholders, including the environmental group, and we worked through. The recommendation was to use battery electric buses. We'll be submitting a grant request next week to the RPT to fund an implementation of that technology in our system. The demand response vehicles, this is a chart showing how far our vehicles travel, and the vertical dash lines are how far a bus on a battery electric vehicle can go. As you can see, we probably have more on the right side than the left, and we want to be on the left side. So that's requires us to have fast charging stations somewhere in our rural areas, so in the middle of the day, the bus can stop, get recharged, and then it has to stay. Our fixed group, which is mostly our commuter bus, they're well within the range of an electric powered vehicle, so that should not be a problem. So probably our first deployment may be for commuter bus. And we'll be looking throughout the counties. We know where our center of gravities are for our services, so we will probably locate fast charging stations there, hopefully with a public-private partnership. Microtransit's on everybody's terms these days. We are applying for a grant again next week to explore that service delivery method for JAUNT. We think that's a way to go. Again, if you're not familiar with the terminology, I know Diana is knee-deep in this stuff. It's like an Uber for transit, where you make a spontaneous trip. Our current method is you got to call ahead and make a reservation. We think people want to travel more spontaneously. So we're looking at that. Where in our region should that be? And what should the rules of engagement be to operate that service? We are actually, in fact, negotiating with a national microtransit provider today to see about partnering with them on more immediate deployments. We just completed we're about to complete a transit development plan. The board will be asked to vote on it in about 2 weeks. And it's a 6-year look ahead for our services, seeing where our needs are and how we might best meet those needs. We've looked at various demographic patterns. Where do people who need transit typically live? This is our 7-county area. The darker the color, the more the need. This is the low poverty population concentrations. These are older adults where they live. And as you can see, it's pretty well widespread on both of those demographics. This is a transit needs indicator, which is an accumulation of several factors. And again, the darker the color, the more the need it is. And another grant that we're applying for next week is to do a more deeper dive into the needs of the different counties to quantify it, both in terms of how much service we need and how much of that service costs to satisfy that need. We also did a stakeholder satisfaction survey for JAUNT. Probably not a statistically valid survey, but from the ones that we did get back, JAUNT seems to be doing a pretty good job among most people that we surveyed. They made a number of suggestions, like an app-based smartphone, and help people track their trips and book their trips, various service improvements throughout our service area that we will be looking at in the coming months. In fact, Nelson, we're discussing with Nelson to actually go to a countywide service, which we don't have today, and a 5-day-a-week service, which we don't have today. And Fluvanna will have some similar conversations as well. So some communities are embracing transit, others maybe stepping back a little bit. Let's see. This is right. You're still here. So we're trying to recover from COVID, and we're trying to do some image building campaigns and some marketing to get more people to ride the bus. We are seeing an upward trend in our ridership, which is another factor which is increasing our cost. As ridership goes up, we need to deploy more service, so that's a positive. And this is a commercial that we're playing. I think it's playing through the spring. Albemarle on the local stations.
Sure, you've seen us around, but have we been formally introduced? Since 1975, JAUNT's professional operators have offered compassionate and inclusive transportation for everyone. And in the past 2 years, we have delivered essential workers to their jobs, taken patients to critical healthcare appointments, shuttled voters to the polls, and helped you stay connected. We are grounded in service to our community. Where can JAUNT take you?
That concludes my presentation. I think I went through, I had 45 minutes.
Well, you have any questions?
Say it again.
You still have questions here.
Sure.
All right, so we'll open it up for questions. Personally, I feel like I just drank from a fire hose, but it's really good information.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, it's just a lot of information. So let's open it up for questions. Who has a question?
Yeah, I don't know what the number of this slide is with all the yellow, orange, squiggly lines. I'd love to know what those lines represent.
Oh, I'm sorry. What they are patterns where our services operate. So they're carrying passengers from one area to another. And it just shows you the interconnectedness of our rural, urban, and transit deserts. It's all together. So it'd be difficult to cut part of it out without affecting the other pieces of it. And before I go much further, I want to thank the PDC. They wrote endorsement letters for us for our grants that I mentioned. So I want to thank you. I meant to thank you yesterday, and I forgot.
So that's great, yeah. All right, more questions, anyone?
Do you guys look at ridership as a function of capacity? Like, have you faced anyone suggesting maybe it doesn't need to be a bus?
Oh, well, that is a consideration. Right now, capacity, even when our ridership is high, is not an issue. The biggest cost we face is our bus operator. So whether they're driving a standard vehicle or a car, we're probably going to pay the same amount of money for them. So the buses that we typically run are flexible in the sense that we can carry a lot of people or one person. We can do wheelchairs, and it's easier to maneuver wheelchairs on and off a bus than we normally do, which is more productive and more efficient use of our driver's time. So the answer to your question, we don't at this point look at demand. It's how far we can carry people most efficiently.
How many mobility devices do you kind of average on a trip? Do you know that? Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. Our average vehicle may have 2 people on board, very rarely more than 3. And I think maybe one of them might be a wheelchair user.
Okay.
But those are really rough estimates.
Thank you.
Questions?
Are you able to go back to sort of your, maybe I should have interrupted you to begin some of your earlier slides. So when you talk about, I guess, the cure, so looking back towards past issues that the agency is trying to address. The pieces you brought up about deserts and how your funding streams are such that it's not like you can provide a fully sort of fungible, it doesn't sound like completely scalable type system because of the ways, the types of money you get and what they're designated for. How much was that was always an issue and was just only recently discovered because of the work that you all are doing, or is there something that's sort of a new discovery, I guess, or a new any changes in the laws, or is just not the laws were not applied appropriately before the regulations?
It's hard to answer. I think this issue about mixing urban and rural has been around for decades. And it's really benefited the city of Charlottesville because they have not, the only federal money we get is for urban is from Charlottesville, and it's only for operations and only for ADA. No capital money from the federal side is put in for urban capital in the city. I mean, no one would get this to the city if they apply for it. I'm not trying to malign the city at all. There's only so much federal money, so whatever you give to John, you take it away from Cat. So someone's gonna have to pay the local share somewhere. So the solution really is to go after discretionary money and bring new money into the region. And I don't think John has been on the shopping list in the past, but it needs to be in the future. So the problems have been around for years. We're just now recognizing them. And it's kind of a shoot the messenger. We go out to the communities and tell them about all this. And we had a very frank discussion with the city administration this past Tuesday. That's the reality that we're facing. But we do have some ideas that we can work around. But it's been around for a while. But it's exacerbated because we have people gaming the system. So not only did we use the money in an incorrect way, we got money we were supposed to get because we cooked the books.
So now we know why Garland's not here today, right?
Garland's
That's a joke.
Garland's actually a good partner. In fact, we talked about Tuesday about how we might pursue urban capital money for John.
Yeah.
Where we're going to see if we can work on that together and then bring in the RFP when we can.
Yeah.
So that he's been a good partner. And I think the relationship between John and Kat, I think, has improved. It's always been, I think, a tense relationship that I understand. But we're trying to correct that, and I give a lot of credit to Carl for making that work.
And I would agree with that. I think the relationship has improved from my viewpoint. Is excellent. Other comments, questions?
I'll just throw out, related to that spider of all the different colors, the map, there are lots of people way out in the country who are perfectly able and want very much to work, but they cannot drive a car. And this is even back to 2010 when the previous board of supervisors wanted to cut service dramatically, and these families with their moms or somebody came and very clearly showed how important it was for the life of those families to be able to keep that bus running through Earlysville out to Boothville and that kind of thing. So glad to see that orange line out there. Hopefully we'll be able to keep it going.
And these are conceptual lines. Now, to go off your point a little bit further, there seems to be a myth that if you got a car, you don't need transit. That's not really true. There are people who are kind of on the margins that have to have a car, but they have to make a choice. So I keep the car on the road so I can go to work, or do I pay the rent?
Yeah.
And so you have that population, and John and Kat can help people stretch their discretionary dollars a lot further. And so I think if we look at the whole scene, the picture, we can help people build wealth and have upward mobility in the society, whereas without public transit, you can't get that done.
Well, just to your point, I mean, we've seen studies, I think most of us, where some people are spending over 50%
Yes.
of their income, which is not doable on transportation.
Right.
Yeah, not doable. I have another question if nobody has one right this minute. I am, to be honest with you, surprised. I'm used to living in a world where school buses lasted 15 years, 14 years, 16 years. We're talking 5 years for the world's bus. Could you get the company that makes school buses to make your? Just saying.
Well, some of the school bus companies do make vehicles our size, some of the special ed vehicles.
Yeah.
I don't know how long they last, like 7 years? I know the regular school buses last like 7
Those
years.
expectancies is still 15 to 16.
Yeah, 15 to 16 years,
Now,
and you're talking 5.
The 5 years is minimum before we can replace them. You know, we try to keep them on the road a little bit longer, but that's kind of a rule of thumb.
Interesting.
So.
But that is a big difference.
But our buses are basically trucks. They have a body.
Okay, they're more like.
So they're probably like a U-350 pickup truck that you see on the road.
Okay.
With a bus body on it. So when you think about it in that terms, where some of Garland's buses are specially purposed, and they're supposed to last, I think it's last 12 years, or supposed to last 12 years.
Okay, and that helps them. I was just surprised at the difference.
Well, I'm glad, when I drove, used one of your buses years ago as part of the education fleet, old number 33 was the one I used for about 10 years, and it had very mushy shock absorbers and had at least 250,000 miles on it. So I know that when you get to those, it takes more to keep them, your mechanics are doing a whole lot more work than is worth. So that's a
The other thing about
trade-off for you.
school buses too, and I don't know how it is with Charmaine's, where the average school bus probably puts on half the miles
Yeah.
that our transit bus. So the miles is a big factor in keeping buses on the line.
Yeah, and they rotate the school buses so that they get city and rural
Yeah.
mileage, which makes a difference too.
Yes.
Not speaking for you, Charmaine, but I just heard you
And the school buses are
say.
basically trucks too.
Yeah.
They're heavier duty trucks.
Heavy duty. So you all, I guess, are doing some sort of work on where those charging stations would need to be. You talked about in the rural area.
Well, we applied for a grant, we'll apply for a grant next week, again, thanks to PEZ for writing an endorsement letter for us. The purpose of that study will be to implement, how do we go about implementing battery electric buses in our fleet in the rural areas? So they'll be looking at, you know, where should the stations be, and what do they need to look like? There's some public-private partnerships we might be able to obtain. So they'll be taking this step a little bit further. Presumably, when we get down with that study, we can start thinking about applying for some capital grants to buy the buses, buy the necessary charging equipment to go with them.
So when you talk about rural area, though, you're talking about the surrounding counties as well. Those
Right,
rural
well,
areas.
Albemarle's got rural areas too.
Yeah,
So somewhere in there. Now, Albemarle and Charlottesville is easier because we have
right.
a base in the middle of everything.
But I'm just thinking about the other rural areas.
Like Louisa,
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
Zion Crossroads,
Yeah.
or Fluvanna, maybe Palmyra, might be an area we want to base a fast charging station.
Other questions that folks have? I have one more. I see Monticello Micro Transit. So with that, you're talking about the historic home, the tourist destination of Monticello.
Well, it's one of the, you know, on the Albemarle expansion study,
Yes.
there were 3 zones.
Yes.
The 2 that you're looking at now, plus the
Monticello.
Monticello. That's what that is. They just said when
Okay.
people are ready to go, where that would be a good thing for John.
Because this was not the Monticello magisterial district, well, when we were talking about that grant, it was Pantops,
US 29.
29, and Monticello, meaning
And it's that one.
Thomas Jefferson's
Yes.
On
Monticello.
the mountaintop,
Yeah.
PVCC, basically.
In the study, we worked with Thomas Jefferson's Monticello and helped them look
Right.
at shuttles, but we also did a microtransit zone in the neighborhood.
Right, and we did expand it, but I'm just trying to get clarity because I'm just trying to figure out exactly, when you say Monticello, I was trying to figure out exactly what.
Right, it's that same zone, and,
Yeah.
I don't think the county would have to be a partner on that, I don't think you're ready
Yeah,
to do that.
and we pushed it off because we weren't ready for it.
Right. that's
But
fine.
Lucinda's right, it included some of the area around the historic home, but it certainly was not Monticello Magisterial District. I'm just trying to, yeah, that whole area down in that, around there. And then I had, so Nelson and Fluvan, a 5-day a week, is what you were saying, those two counties. Okay, that's great. All right, any other comments or questions?
We gotta help you figure out how to tap into that sweet, sweet UVA money.
There you go.
Well, DEC has already offered some money, and we're gonna use some of that to offset the cost that Buckingham is seeing.
Yeah.
They can't afford the increases that we're showing them, so I think if we can bring some of that money in, that'll help them out a lot.
So I see a couple of other bullets here. The JAUNT Alternative Feasibility Study, I saw you referenced it. Do you have another presentation, or is this pretty much it?
This is it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't cheating you or.
The feasibility study.
Was mentioned.
Yeah, right, it refers to this, if you want to read more about it.
Okay.
So.
All right, that's great. So, don't see anybody else with any other questions? No? All right, thank you, that is very interesting. And I guess I should look up at those. Are we good? Christine doesn't have any questions, or I don't see anybody's hands raised there, so, okay. Lucinda, I'm going to turn this over to you, the Mobility Management Letter of Support. And this is going to require a vote. So we will need to take a look at this and then determine if we want to support it with a vote. And the copy of that letter was in our packet to Jen DeBrule.
So I think we talked about this a little bit. At our last meeting, but I want to go through a little bit more about what we're planning and applying for, and ask you to support it with a letter of support. So TJPDC is applying for a 5310 mobility management grant. It's a FTA Section 5310 program. It's discretionary, and the DRP, the Virginia Department of Public Transportation and Rail, manages the FTA grant. So we're applying to DRPT at the end of this month. It supports capital, operating costs, and mobility management. So mobility management is basically to help people with disabilities and older adults who sometimes have difficulty using public transit get rides and have transportation options that work for them. So it kind of goes above and beyond the Americans with Disabilities Act. And you can do a lot of different things with mobility management, but the three goals are to increase public transit projects that exceed the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, improve access to fixed route services, and decrease reliance on paratransit. Paratransit typically is very expensive, so if we can get people on the fixed route, that helps the community and the costs. And then build alternatives to public transit that older adults and people with disabilities can use if they're not able to use the public transit system. So we talked with DRPT, suggested that we talk with Foothills Area Mobility System. They are part of the HANIC Rapid and Regional Commission, and they were very helpful. And so we're working to tailor our program kind of similar to what they started with. They've grown a lot, so they have a lot more than we would start with, but we're just going to start small and keep building. So in the first year, we would introduce the concept of mobility management to the community, working with human service agencies and transit providers. We would start a call center and a website. So it's called a one call, one click center, and people can call and get referred to transit. So we're not gonna provide transportation services, we're not starting anything new. We're gonna work with the transit providers to try to make sure that people are able to get to where they need to go. So it's a referral center, but it will have like one unified vision so that people don't have to try to figure out how to like transfer between Cat and John, and you know, they'll just go to one place for all the transit options. Rappahannock Rapid offered to loan us their data system, which is really robust. So we will also be gathering data on needs. We'll call people back and make sure that they were able to find a ride, and if they weren't, we'll take notes on that as well. And we'll be building partnerships with the service providers and the aging and disability communities. So the startup details is the first year budget is $110,000. It's a 4% local match, which is going to be covered through TJPDC. We're not asking for any more funds for that. There'll be a half-time manager for 12 months and a full-time staff member for 6 months or thereabouts. We have to hire somebody to cover that. So we'll see how quickly we can get it done.
And Lucinda, just as my packet said 125,000, so the 110 is the.
We started with 150,000 and
Oh, that's the right direction.
Keeps going down.
Yeah, it's going down, that's good. So 110 is really the.
That's right now, yeah.
All right.
It's sad for me.
It's gonna get hard to get much lower than that.
Yeah.
Well, those in government are always happy when it's going that direction.
This time.
So then we hope to continue to grow. We're going to talk with funders outside of DRPT and continue making partnerships. We can develop programs to meet the unmet needs that we identified. We can also work on programs to support transit, coordinate scheduling between transit and other riders. We can do travel training, which helps people who have difficulty, like barriers riding the bus. Maybe they don't know when to get off at their stop, or they're worried about doing it by themselves. A travel trainer will come to your home, go through with you the barriers that you have, and then strategies to fix them. And then they ride the bus with the person until the person feels comfortable, and then they follow the bus, to make sure that nothing happens. So it's kind of like a bus buddy kind of thing, and that will help people get on the public transit system, the fixed route system, and increase ridership and reduce the demand on paratransit. It will also give people freedom to move around and not have to schedule things 2 days or a day in advance, and things like that. One of the things that we could do is a unified transit interface. So again, the transit agencies would look like one service. If we ever had fares again, it would be one payment. We can really unify it from the outside. And basically also just help with efficiency and collaboration. So that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if there's any questions.
So I'll open it up to questions. You all have some questions? Quiet group today.
What's the time frame? I might have missed that.
Yeah, I didn't say that. So the grants are awarded in June or July, and then we'll start probably in July or August, and then work our way through it.
So this is regional. So we're helping you with that regional piece.
Yeah, so I've been going to the interagency council meetings and finding that there's a huge need for transportation in rural areas. And then I've been talking with them. There was some misunderstanding about JAUNT services. I worked with JAUNT's customer service representative, and I'm going to be going back to the interagency council with some more education about JAUNT services. So just little things like that, I think will help a lot. And so, yeah, that would be something that would be under the mobility management program. Right now, I'm just kind of doing that on my own.
So would this be for the entire area that TJPDC covers?
Regionally, that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
So it's region 10. Yeah. Interesting. So then that gets us to the letter, I guess.
Yes.
All right.
And that's in your packet. And we're just asking the TJPDC to support the application.
So you're asking the Regional Transit Partnership through TJPDC, right, to support? Okay, I got you.
Supports the TCC.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to move adoption of the letter.
All right, so
That's
we
on the list.
have a motion from Ann. Is there a second?
Second.
You two are a team today, aren't you? All right, keep things open here. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, so I think you have the letter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, and I'll remind me to sign it before, because I see my name there, I'll sign it before I leave today. All right, transit provider update is our next agenda item. And Ted, I think John will, I haven't missed anything, have I? So John rolls out first.
Well, I think you already heard from me.
Well, I thought maybe there might be something you'd like to add.
No, I think I pretty much covered what we were up
Okay.
to, so.
All right.
Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry.
Here we go, see?
Thank you. We have a new chief operations officer starting on Monday. His name is Randy Cantor from North Carolina. Considerable experience in rural public transit, paratransit. And then I'm hoping later in the month, a woman from Northern Virginia who has a lot of urban paratransit experience. She would work for Randy. So, but Randy starting Monday and Jackie probably later in the month. So.
I hope you'll bring them to the meetings sometime and introduce them.
We can.
That'd be great, don't
Okay.
y'all think? That'd be nice to see and have an introduction to new faces. All right, so that is it, though. We're good. Okay.
Honest.
That's good. Charmaine, you're next. Albemarle County Public Schools, student transportation.
Okay, so we've been working on some strategic plans to address our driver shortages. So that being said, I have presented several times to the superintendent and his cabinet. The next step for us is now we're gonna have 2x2 meetings with the board to hear some of the plans that we want to move forward with. Part of that recruitment and retention, as you know, we went up to $21.50 an hour. One of the other wonderful things about this increase, and you're gonna hear more about it, and it's this, we implemented what is called the step scale. Meaning we have drivers now making $32, $38, $35, $40 an hour because of their years of experience. So we are going to launch a campaign around recruiting drivers. So you're gonna hear a whole lot more about that step scale. Sorry, Ted.
You don't have to, don't worry about it.
Okay. But anyway, we're really excited about that. The other thing that's happening for us is our electric buses. We do have them. We have 2 electric buses that we're getting ready to put on the road. We're gonna put those in our urban ring. And we also, part of our alternative transportation, we also put our Type A buses, we're getting ready to put those on the road to help support with the driver shortage as well.
What is a Type A bus?
Type A bus is a 14-passenger on that vehicle, where you don't require a CDL license. And so you're trained by DMV, but not the full-blown training like you would have to go through if you were driving one of the larger buses.
I thought maybe had a particular personality.
So we have a lot going on around we're working on what I call a career path for bus drivers. So that's part of our strategic plan that we're looking at. So we really do want to turn this around and do something about it, this driver shortage. So it's a lot of work that we're doing to make a difference. So we'll see what happens.
And you might want to mention, I can guess, about your request for proposal.
Yes. We put out the RFP for outsourcing transportation. So that's another component to what we're doing to try to address that driver shortage. We're right in the evaluation process, so I can't give you any information on it, but to let you know that it's in full blown, it's in works. And so working through the logistics of that. I can state some of the things we put in the solicitation, though. What we put in the solicitation was to look at just just a limited portion of transportation. This doesn't mean we're eliminating jobs, absolutely not. What we're trying to do is get some relief for our employees. Right now, they're doing a lot of double back runs, and I'm trying to figure out a way, how can I help the employees? And so somehow, some way or another, this is not a favorite for them. They're fearful, they're thinking somehow or another, are you taking our jobs away? Absolutely not. So we in Albemarle, we're giving our students the opportunity, we call it CLC Learning Centers, giving them an opportunity to go in other locations and explore education and look at it differently. But they need transportation to get there. So we're hoping that this outsourcing will help support that initiative for our students.
And I just want to add, Charmaine, just so the city folks know, they're aware of your RFP. And
Yes,
you're working
yes,
with the
they
city.
are.
So it's not in isolation.
They're just
Yeah.
waiting for us to make a decision, and then we're gonna probably sit down and talk about how we can share efforts, how we can maybe, because we wrote the contract so that we can do a joint alliances, so if anybody wanted to ride the contract, you'd be able to do so. So, that's just a little bit of what we're doing.
That's all right.
How many type A buses do you guys have?
Right now I have 4, and we're gonna do more, because again, it's an opportunity, because I have some teachers who are interested in driving, so if they could help support getting our students to school, because that is a goal, not only safely, but get them there on time. And so.
Any hurdle you can remove.
Yes.
Lloyd and I are going to sign up too.
I got it.
I'm still a judge, I can't be in court till I come off the bus. I do have one question that may sort of relate to something that Ted was talking about, and looking at the fuel study that was done for JAUNT. As you're moving towards some electric buses, are there ways that, some of the fast charging station sort of infrastructure or anything else where there could be some working together to hold down the capital costs of that transition?
Maybe right now we are confined to, we can only use these buses in the urban ring because of the infrastructure. We can only be so far away from that location. So if there's an opportunity to plug in other areas of the county, then yes, we can certainly have some conversations, because then that opens up the door for us to maybe look at buses in the rural area.
Well, there's also going to be some need for example, common expertise on maintenance.
Right.
That may be different from the maintenance that people who running diesel engines would understand. And there could be some other opportunities for cooperation as you start to ramp some of that stuff up.
Yes.
There may be something where everybody needs 1/3 of a person for this particular niche of the job, and maybe you share that person.
Right.
That's the sort of thing I was thinking.
The training programs are fantastic.
That's right.
2 things I'll just ask about or add. Your career pathway thing, I hope that you were in contact or could get in contact with the workforce centers here in Norton, because they will help to develop all that curriculum and so forth. Safety programs. Back decades ago when I was driving a junk van, there was a 2-day safety course that all of us had to pass with flying colors before you were allowed to rent the bus. Is that, I hope that you have, or tell us a little bit about what the safety training is for people in these vans as opposed to the CDL, 24, 30.
Okay, so even though you're not required to have a CDL license, you still are mandated to go by the Department of Education training, the training curriculum, that encompasses the safety components that is necessary for you to know to transport students. So no, it doesn't take you away from that. It just takes you away from a little bit of the DMV requirements to drive the vehicle, but not away from DOE safety guidelines and regulations. You're still mandated to follow all of that.
I remember how much fun it was doing a test, backing up, zigzag through the cones at the Fashion Square at 7:20. It was not fun at all. And the last thing. Are any of the electric vehicles that you're looking at, do they have the capability to charge the batteries while braking? Because I did look briefly at an EV automobile before I gave up on it and decided I'd wait another generation. And that was the situation with that one, was that as it was in operation, it also had some kind of phase that was putting power back on the system. Yeah, that's exactly what it's called.
Let me follow up, I need to
That
follow up on
maybe
that.
something that is available to everybody, I just have no idea. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I think, Kendall, you're next from UTS.
All right, hey.
There you go.
Thanks for having me, and also Allison, you guys. We returned to our 15-minute headways on our academic student routes last Wednesday. So we call that full service, or more specifically right now, spring 2023 service, because all the changes that we've had to make through COVID and everything. We are running what we call continuous service on our UVA Health commuter routes. So that really boils down to about 3 or 4 minute headway at peak times, which is insanity. I don't know to what extent Becca has explained our night pilot and our overnight offering that we have. We run one route that kind of goes through the most popular areas like the library, the corner, to the dorms. And then we run what used to be known as Safe Ride, but it has been rebranded as UTS On Demand. Kind of, if you imagine that donut in the middle, On Demand, covers the rest of the campus outside of that donut that the fixed route covers. And so it's an interesting kind of like mix of the two types of service, and we're experimenting with that. I think maybe we could speak to it a bit more at a future RTP after we have a bit more data on how it's working. We have 4, we call them battery electric buses, or BEVs. We have 4 that are on their way. We're heading down there this summer to actually see our buses be made.
Where's there?
There is Greenville, South Carolina at Proterra. And so we'll have those buses with a whole ribbon cutting. You guys will be invited, it'll be a whole thing. But we'll have a ribbon cutting probably in September or October. And we hope that those buses, join our service before the end of the year. Meanwhile, with that Safe Ride replaced by UTS On Demand, this is one of the reasons I asked you this question earlier. We kind of figured out that we didn't need these big ass vans that we have running this overnight service, because they were filling them up. Average ridership was lower than we needed to have a van for. And so what we're doing is pivoting a little bit. We'll have a few vans. We have some ADA requirements that we have to cover. But we're actually purchasing a few Chevy Bolts to run our overnight on-demand piece, which it's been on my mind, that kind of reduction of size and cost. Driver-wise, we currently have 31 active full-time salaried drivers. We need 43 to get back to the base level that we want to have, which is 10-minute service on our academic routes. We have hired a recruiting and retention specialist whose name is Al Turner. I would love to connect with especially school bus, people transportation, CAT, JAUNT. Maybe we can pull together sort of a recruiting coalition, if you will. I don't know if that's pie in the sky, probably I'm new here.
Yeah.
But I think something like that would be awesome. And Al's been doing great work for us in the couple of months that they've been with us already. We're still lagging behind, of course, but we feel like we have some good initiatives brewing. I feel like I'm talking a long time. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You said that you made a note of what you're talking about, though. So we'll get, we'll work on that.
Yeah, let me know. I'll connect you guys.
Okay.
The main thing I think for me is this concept of elevating a bus driver in the public consciousness from sort of an entry level type position to a trade, that that you choose, like, you know, on the level of an electrician or a plumber, you know, make it an honest to goodness trade. And if we can do that, I think, especially in this region, you know, the rest of the world needs drivers too, but we only care about this region. Maybe that could be the mission, you know. Anyway,
Certainly we could,
Yes.
because I know Albemarle County would love to have that, so that's something maybe we could at least facilitate some discussion.
again, maybe a little pie in the sky, but you know, that's what I'm here to do. And finally, I know you guys have met Sally LeBeau, and she's been at RTP meetings. We have a new UVA Health contact. Sally got a promotion, so she may still be involved. But our new contact, her name is Vicki Marsh, and I think maybe a standing RTP invitation or however it's been with Sally would be good for Vicki.
Lucinda's writing that down.
Okay, that's Vicki with an E, V-I-C-K-I-E.
Okay, I'll get her email to Al.
Yeah.
Do you want me to take Sally off?
No, yeah, don't do that. Yeah,
That's great.
I don't want that on my hands.
Another comment. That's great. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any questions?
Where'd you get all that passion and energy
Yeah.
for buses?
We need to have you at every single meeting for that enthusiasm.
Energy.
I've been pounding Red Bulls all day. What do you guys think of this beard, by the way? Demond? I don't know.
We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
I want to see you go up against that guy from Greene County in the mustache.
Oh, I can't compete with that.
Juwan, I assume you're giving us a report from Cat.
Yes,
I always hate going after Ken.
Sorry, Jay.
So, me and Ken will go way back. So I'll start with the transit side. We have a lot of studies going on. We have the alternate fuel study. We have the TSP, which is about to go out, and the microtransit, which is also
So
about to
in
go
TSP
out.
is,
The Transit Strategic Plan.
There you go.
I blanked for a
just to
second.
get away from the alphabet soup a little bit. Thank you.
So the microtransit, we're trying to put that out soon. You see, we reported to the board of supervisors, and the draft is almost finalized, so that should be going out soon. And that is to cover microtransit for the US 29 area and the Pantops area. And so we're trying to get that ready, up and running by the end of the year. And as Charmaine said, you know, we are trying everything we can to recruit drivers. I think, you know, to voice everyone's, we all have a shortage, and we're all trying things. I would like to thank Charmaine for pioneering the STEP program, trailblazing for us. We've been asking for that. We haven't been able to do that quite yet, so thank you. And I'm very interested in Type A as well. We have thoughts about getting it, but we're not sure about the licensing and all that. It kind of looks like you still have to go to the DMV to get a test. So, yeah, just let me know how to get around that, or not get around it, but how to get through it.
What you say in this room stays in this room. You all remember that.
So, switch over to the school bus side. You know, we are aware of the third-party contract that Albemarle County Schools has put out, so we're interested in keeping an eye on it, and because they include a clause for us to be able to jump on that as well. We'll see how, you know, the city decides to handle that. But we are trying our best. We're going to put ads out soon for city pupil school bus to try to recruit. We're just hurting, but
Yeah. All right.
Sure,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Juwan, I think I heard you say on the microtransit aiming for the end of the year. I know it was first announced, it was beginning of the year. Last week I thought I heard summer. Now I'm hearing maybe end of the year. Is there any limits on the grant about a demonstration about starting or?
I don't know if there's a time or the cutoff date. Unless Ben, you were, yeah. So. But we are about to put the RFP out, and that is going to be up for, we want to finalize that within 60 days, and then have that vendor in place to roll it out. And like I said, by the end of the year, we want it up and running. Not hopefully sooner. I think more like fall is what we're looking at. August, September is what we're looking at.
And that's kind of what we heard in our meeting.
Okay, I haven't listened to the whole tape of that BOS meeting, I couldn't get there, but the center and CAA is very interested in helping promote that when it gets going, so that the demonstration proves the need. Other question, any update on the CAT route improvements, implementation?
So I know Garland has mentioned a date, fairly soon for at least the center and then the Route 6. So hopefully that'll be done, either by the summer or before the summer is what we're
That's
aiming
what I heard last month, so I'm hoping that we're
The same thing.
sticking with that, yeah, we'll be ready.
I would
to
check that
implement
date,
it.
yeah, so.
I understand, it's a
Yeah.
tough time.
But,
So, my stakeholders are asking me every time, it's like, isn't that RTP meeting, when are you gonna hear, when are we gonna have it? So,
Right.
we have eager.
I'm hoping to be before the summer, so.
Cool, thank you.
How many drivers do you, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
how many drivers do you need for microtransit
We don't know yet.
to get it off the ground and going?
I mean, right now we have, we don't know yet, because, you know how many vehicles we're gonna have?
Yeah,
So I don't know how many drivers are associated with that, depending on the shift and whatnot.
I might have a lead for you. Let's talk after the meeting.
Oh, that's great.
Well, we gotta talk about yours.
Well,
Yeah.
see, that's what this meeting's all about, is getting people together and talking and sharing issues and solving problems. So that's, I'm excited, that's good.
I think we all need some Red Bull.
We are the best group. You gotta admit, this is the most fun meeting we've been to all week. And it's only Thursday, right? Okay, so, Neil's not here. So Wood's here, so, Wood, hello, you're on.
Great. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I just have one update, and this is an update that I'm sure all the transit agency folks are very familiar with. Our grant season is open and will be closing on the 1st. So make sure applications are in and everything is attached to your application and that you've marked them complete in the system.
And I would assume that's February the 1st.
Correct. That is February 1st.
Okay. All right, any questions for Wood from PRPD? Okay, thank you, Wood, appreciate it. And then staff updates. The Ashland Express, Sarah, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick update. I know Lucinda sent around the annual report to the RTP list a few weeks ago, I believe.
I don't remember seeing it. Yeah. I don't think
Send
so.
it again, please.
Just resend it. We'll be looking for it.
I've seen it.
Wasn't the annual report, it was about the public comment for the schedule changes.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay.
So we can definitely get the annual report out to the list as well. Ridership numbers are looking great. I think probably since the last time I reported, we had November and December come through, which were a little over 1,700 riders for both of those months. So really excellent. We even had several days that were up in the 60s,
Wow.
which is kind of like our high point that we're reaching, but still averaging right around that 50 riders per day. So the other more exciting news is about the schedule changes. So the schedule has not been finalized just yet. The public comment period closed on January 17th. So they are working through all of those comments, but have sort of an idea of what those schedule changes, which really is mostly the addition of the 2 routes to serve the UVA health workers. They are doing tests at the moment, like literally this week, of running the buses to make sure that the timings are all coming out correctly. And that will be the final step before those new schedules get published. Looking at hopefully the beginning of February for that information. But kind of what the new schedule is looking like is it will be adding a morning trip back to UVA Hospital to pick up those workers at approximately 7:45 a.m. The other trips for the mornings will all stay the same. In the evening, there will be 2 new pickups at UVA, one at 6:45 p.m. and then a second one at 7:45 p.m. So the whole idea there was to be able to capture and help those 12-hour shift workers that they have. The PM 1 and 3, which I realize even I don't have full association for what exactly that schedule is, but those are staying the same. It does look like there will be an adjustment on the two of the PM trips, which was 2 and 4, of 15 minutes. And the idea behind that one was to work with the UVA facilities workers who actually end their day at 3:30. We heard direct feedback from a couple of them that they were actually waiting around about 50 minutes to get on that PM route. And the fact that they were willing to even wait that long just, I think, is a testament to how important this service is. But it did look like with some of these new routes, they were going to be able to hopefully get them a little bit closer on their pickup in the evening. So that is pretty much the main ways that the schedule does look like to change. Obviously, once we have those official times, it will be up with a link on the rideshare website as well as the Bright website that operates the Afton Express. And then you will hear lots and lots and lots of advertisements. We're going to be on the radio, on the TV. We've got geofencing for internet. So we're going to be doing our best to get those new schedule changes out there so that everyone knows. And then, of course, we have some targeted marketing scheduled for UVA employees as well.
That's great. Any questions for Sarah? That's really good news.
Yes,
That's
very
great.
exciting, and it's been a long time coming. In fact, to echo everyone else's sentiments here, what has delayed this the most was drivers.
Right.
They didn't have drivers to start the routes, but that's fixed for the moment, so.
All right. And Sandy, not everybody in the room is on the MPO, just a good number.
Yes, so keep it high level.
So if you'll give us the update on the MPO.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, we are working through the long-range transportation plan, so we are starting some stakeholder outreach next month in February, where we will be meeting with some stakeholders for some discussion groups for an initial review of our draft goals and objectives that are being developed for the plan, and then we will finalize the language that we will use when we go out for broader public engagement. Once we review any feedback we get from the stakeholder discussion groups with the MPO committees. So you'll probably be seeing a lot more about that in the months to come as we really start kicking off the engagement process. The Safe Streets Roads for All grant application that we submitted, I think it was August or September, somewhere around there. We should be hearing back about the grant awards for that anytime now. So we are hopefully crossing our fingers that we'll be successful. The FAQs on their website said that they are planning to award hundreds of these grants for safety action plans, and given that the application requirements were not incredibly stringent, we are hopeful that we'll be hearing some good news about that shortly. As most of you are probably aware of, but maybe not everybody, the Commonwealth Transportation Board did receive the recommended projects from the staff on which projects should receive smart scale funding. So there were 3 projects within the urbanized area that included improvements to Peter Jefferson Parkway and 250, which also included an 80-lot park and ride. That also included an intersection improvement at Belvedere and Ryan Road that was submitted by Albemarle County, and then some multimodal improvements on Avon Street that start at the Druid intersection and go into the Albemarle County about where it's where the storage units are. I forget what that intersection is, but so we are thankful for the projects that did get funded. Our construction district did do very well as far as receiving funding, but obviously the amount of funding that is available is not as significant as it was in the previous round. So the outcomes are a little bit more moderated compared to our success previously.
Could you give me a little more clarity on those 3 projects and where they stand? Because I got different information from some people emailed today that there wasn't enough money to do those. I'm not sure if I'm understanding.
The 3 projects I just mentioned were the projects that were recommended for funding through Smart Scale.
I read before, so
yes.
So the timeline, though, the final is this summer?
Yeah, so these are just recommended right now. The final funding allocations and commitments will be made when the Commonwealth Transportation Board approves their 6-year improvement program in June.
Thank you, that's right.
Yes.
That sounds better than what misinformation I got.
Well, and then the projects will start
I understand, yeah.
like 3-4 years
Yeah.
later.
Hopefully I'll live to see the
They
day.
won't be putting a shovel on the ground.
So the last thing that I'll mention is that one of the applications that we did submit was for the bicycle and pedestrian bridge over the Rivanna River that would connect the Woolen Mills neighborhood to the Pam Topsgrove area. That project, because it was over a river, there's a lot of information that's still unknown about how much it would cost to construct that project. So based on that, the contingencies that were added to the base cost estimate were significant. So the project base cost was $18.4 million. When we added contingencies and inflation, the final cost estimate submitted with the application was $42 million. And in reviewing sort of that process, what we realized is that we just really need more information because the project benefits were very high, specifically for things like improving access to jobs for disadvantaged communities and the opportunities for this to have significant environmental improvements for the area. There's a lot of cross commuting that occurs over the river between the Tops and the other areas. So there are quantified demonstrated benefits for this project. So at the policy board meeting last night, they voted to support the preparation of an application for federal funding to complete the preliminary engineering work. So what that will do is that will help us answer some of these unknown questions to develop a more accurate cost estimate to hopefully make the project viable for future funding applications. This is a discretionary grant program. It's highly competitive, but there's been a lot of work. There's a lot of demonstrated benefits for this project, and so it seems like it is worth continuing to pursue to see if we can find a viable opportunity to get this bridge implemented and constructed.
Great. Any questions for Cindy?
It's just terrific that the bridge has gotten to this point since 2002 in this room, the chart that was talking about it. So it does take a long time, but we will get there.
All right. And Lucinda, we are all excited about the idea of an authority, I think. So, but the first step is the governance study.
Yes.
So you're going to give us an update on where we are with the governance.
Yeah, so we have completed the first tech memo, which is in your packet, and there's a link to it on the website too. It covers the existing conditions of the transit agencies and the legislation allowing for authorities in Virginia. So I found it really interesting. It talks about how transit agencies now are governed and make decisions about transit. It covers the revenue, how they get their revenue and operations. And then the second part looks at the legislation. So we currently have authority legislation, we just don't have the revenue side. So it takes that, and the chart at the end is a little cut off in the paper, but it's on the website. Chart like covers all of the different types of authorities that allow transit, that fund transit in Virginia, and then it compares them against each other and the current legislation that we have. We've started working on the second tech memo, which is reviewing peer regions and looking at different ways that they address, having an authority, managing funds and bringing in more funds. So that should be done soon, and in March, AECOM will come and give the MPO and the RTP an update on the project.
Oh, good.
So we should have those two tech memos by then. And let's see, we're going to have a steering committee meeting in March. I'll be sending out invitations after the grant proposal is in. So probably early February. And I'll distribute the first tech memo with that as well. The tech memos are not distributed to the public at this point because they may change. They're going to be put into the final report, but as we continue to do the study and work through it, there might be things that we want to add or take away from them. So that's why we're not broadcasting it out to everybody, but I do want the committees to have it and be able to look at it and give any feedback that they feel they need to. housekeeping questions?
Oh, sure.
Since we
Well,
have
let me
that.
just ask quickly, does
Yeah.
anybody have any questions about what Lucinda just presented about the update? No? And just for clarity from in my head, so as part of the governance study, we will be getting back any recommendations that we would need to take to the General Assembly next year based on the authority that we received such a long time ago.
Yes.
Okay, just clarity. All right, thank you. So go ahead.
So I, like, having meetings in person, how many meeting packets should I print out? I printed 3 today, and I don't know, like, if you guys want me to print more, or.
I don't know how many of you are picking up, I always bring hard copies, but that's me. I bring my own.
Mine was by mistake because I forgot my laptop, so don't count me on it every
So,
day.
but you're trying to figure out saving paper.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So-
okay,
Does anybody need a hard copy packet when they come in?
Oh.
And I just bring my own,
okay.
because I can print it out and read it at home, so.
Okay. And I think right now I've sent the meeting notices out individually. Did you want me to send like one meeting notice that like goes for the whole year, like to save the date? And then also, of course, send the packets.
We don't want all the packets for a year, so. Just teasing. But it is good. What do you, yeah, the calendar issue, we really do want that, I would think. Everybody wants that.
I think it's, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Shanti did that today, right, for the MPO?
Yeah.
So
I
you-
sent lots of individual meeting invitations.
So you
Sorry,
have,
everyone.
so you have the dates now, so you can go on and just send them out and plug, we can plug them into our calendars, if that works, okay.
That was all I had.
Okay. Let's see, so that takes us to other business, and I'm gonna just let you guys know, I know you're disappointed, but I don't have any other business. So, unless someone else does, that you want to bring up. Any questions or other business? All right, our next meeting is February the 23rd, same place, same time, and you have a half an hour to play with, so I consider. All right, yes, second. Excellent.